today. And of course, funding is a really, really important area for us, for everyone here that runs a station, or any business that is. And I'm going to talk to you, got a panel coming up very shortly. But first of all, most of the, I started in radio a long, long time ago, but nowadays I spend my life finding money and grants, and not just for radio, but also for other community organisations. So it's a difficult one, because apart from advertising, which we all allow to take, grant funding is a really important aspect of what we do. And there are many funders out there, and some of you have probably had funding from some of these that I'm going to mention, like the National Lottery Community Fund, which they've given loads of money over many, many, many years. And they've got different pots. So they've got a pot called Awards for All, which is going up to 20k from next month. And that's really for projects and capital costs like equipment, that kind of thing. And you can apply every year. So if you fancy something one year, you can reapply. But as long as it's for something different, then that's a really good fund. But also, of course, the lottery have got another fund as well called the Reaching Communities Fund, where you can apply for anything over £10,000. And that particular pot, you can have up to 5 years. So they fund things like, for your radio station, they could fund staff, they could fund, if you're working with young people, they could fund youth workers, and they could also fund refurbishment of equipment again. And you can model that in over a 5-year period. I was lucky to get 3 years, so I'm just reapplied again now. And then there's a website that you can join called Funding Central, which you can type in what kind of organisation you are or what you were trying to do, and they can match you to some fundings. But the funders, I know it seems like hard work to get grant funding, but they all need to know that you're a bona fide company, you've got accounts, you've got a constitution, you are who you say you are, you've got a bank account, that kind of thing. That is standard practice on any grants. And of course, policies and procedures in place. If you're going to work with young people, they want to see that, you've got your DBS checks, you've got your policies safeguarding, child protection, all that kind of thing. It is hard work to set it up, but once you've set it up, you're away, because you can use the same information again on some of the other funders. And they want to see that you've come prepared, that you've actually written your application, there's no poor spelling, and that you've actually thought about the budget and all those kind of things that make your application stand out. Because as you know, with grant funding, there's so many people applying for the same pot, and you need to make sure that you're one step ahead. So your community need, get quotes from your community that you serve, statements from professionals, letters of support you can put in, and know your location, population project. Everyone in here knows the community that they serve, being a community radio station. It's easy peasy. The thing with grants is that I've just been awarded a grant from the NHS, and how that worked, and we've been to many of these events before where people have complained about not getting government grant funding. So I wrote a bid for my station to provide messages for support for NHS, for wellbeing, that kind of thing. NHS have given us some funding. So sometimes when you look at grant funding, you go, oh, well, what do I do? How do I make this work for my project? That's the main thing. How do you make it work? What do you do inside your radio station that can deliver what they want to do, whether it's messages, whether it's working with young people, whether it's employing different people, and making sure your application is legal, and that you demonstrate what they're looking for. So I'll give you a quick example. There's a fund where I come from called a High Sheriff Fund. They promote safety. So you know the government website where you can download the PSAs that say, you know, ride a bike with a helmet and smoke alarm detectors, don't take batteries out of one. We never get any money for that, so I decided to use local school kids to record an advert. They came in, professionally made it, put it out, and that funded that project for a year. Kids also get to learn about road safety and fire safety by using the police and the fire service. So it's thinking about what a funder is looking for. Lottery grants that are pretty basic to get, but other funding is really, you know, when they're looking for how you can meet their criteria. And it does help with the social gain part. And make sure that you've got all your documentation when you apply for a grant. You make sure you've got everything that they ask for. And I know that when we get the panel up in a moment, Richard's been on the Community Radio Fund. I know that he will tell you about the fund and how that is really oversubscribed, as we all know, every time we put in a bid. It is like winning the lottery, isn't it? You know, chances of actually, chances of getting it. So this is not working, huh? This clicker. It's packed up. There we go. So think of your audience, bulletproof everything, and proofread it. Get somebody else to read your grant bid. But it's really important. Now, I'm quite willing, if anyone's looking to write a grant bid, I won't write your grant bid for you, but I'll certainly look over it for you with an extra pair of eyes if that's what you would like as a community project, or give you some ideas on the best people that know about your project is yourselves. So I'm quite willing to overlook and look at stuff for you. And you know, that's really important that we get an application in that you stand a chance of, you know, getting the bid. And once you've got one, it's so easy then to get more. Start off small and then get in more. I mean, I'm a bit, at the moment, the work to put in for an application for £500, I have to put in the same if I'm applying for £10,000. So, you know, it is a lot of work to do at times. And I know that running a community station, you've got other things you need to be doing, but funding is so important in getting everything right. So I'm going to ask Faye, because I know we're going to run out of time. Good luck with your applications, and please do come and see me during lunch or whenever, or contact me via the CMA so that we can, you know, if you want to make contact. And I say I don't mind looking through funding applications. But what we're going to do is ask Faye to introduce our panel. And we're really fortunate this year to have some really good people. And one of them is from Children in Need, who fund me and fund lots of projects around the country. So I hand you over to Faye to introduce them.
Thanks, Danny. Okay then, so we've got a fantastic panel. You've already alluded to one, so we've welcomed, of course, Danny Lawrence, first of all. I'd also now like you to welcome onto the stage Dimple Patel from BBC Children in Need. Thank you, Dimple. Also like to welcome Michelle Durant from Chelmsford Community Radio. And Richard Hilton, CMA, Treasurer and former Ofcom Community Radio Fund panel member. Ask lots of questions, everyone.
Thank you, Faye. Okay, welcome, panel. Let's start off in this order. Dimple, thank you so much for attending. You're part of a big organisation that gives a lot of funding out at Children in Need. And tell us a bit about, because you've changed your stance on how you fund now. It's slightly different. You do it in streams, so perhaps you can explain it of what you do at the moment.
Yeah, sure. Well, hi everyone, and thanks for inviting me here. So I'm Dimple Patel, as Danny just said. I'm a regional funding officer for BBC Children in Need. I'm actually based in Leicester, so I didn't have far to come today, and it's great that you're holding this in Leicester. I have a background in community radio myself, so I know the kind of work that community media does, and we fund a number of community media projects. So BBC Children in Need is a national funder. The work that we fund is for children and young people between the ages from 0 to 18 years of age. And it's for children that have experiencing any kind of barrier in their lives, any kind of challenge or experience that prevents them from thriving. So if you're a not-for-profit organisation and you're working with to support children that are experiencing those kind of barriers in your area, then potentially, we could be a funder that you could look at. We have changed our funding streams. It was following the COVID, following the pandemic, we really looked at what organisations were telling us that they needed. I was just talking to a gentleman earlier, and this is something that we hear quite often, that Children in Need is a difficult fund to get. And we took on that advice, and I think there are reasons why it's not a soft fund, and there are reasons for that which I'll sort of come on to, but we've looked at how we can make our processes much easier to apply for. Like you were just saying, Danny, it takes a lot of time to apply for applications, and that's not your main job, and a lot of the time people are volunteers, so we've tried to make it as easy as possible. So we only ask 3 questions now, but the process, our funding streams, we've got 2 different funding streams. So you can apply for project grants, or you can apply for core funding, and core funding is what's different for us now. So when we say core funding, what we mean is that's the running costs of your organisation. So it doesn't need to be tied to a specific project. If what you want to run is a specific project, then that funding is still there. But if you do need just kind of, your core kind of back office, general running costs, then that is also an option now. And we've got 2 different avenues for that. You can apply for under £15,000 a year, or you can apply for up to, over that, and up to £120,000. So, yeah, and you can apply for 3 years at a time, so you're not having to keep going back, every year before you even finish the first year to think about funding again. So hopefully, that also makes it a lot easier.
Yeah, and I just want to put it on record that, I've been funded by Children in Need for 7 years, and during the COVID period, they were one of the best grant funders who actually, made sure that groups, because a lot of groups were panicking, oh my God, I've got all this money, oh, I've got these projects, how am I going to deliver this, and Children in Need were one of the several funders who actually said, don't worry about it, and kept things, made sure that groups were, looked after, which is really important during that period. I think that the Children in Need also offer some training as well after you get the grant, because their reporting, I don't know if they still do this, but their reporting is slightly different to other grant funders, and so I can remember going on a Make a Difference training in West London. And so you have a grant officer, and they keep in contact with you during that period, and you have to do a report every year. Everything's done on a portal, so you haven't got to do emails and all that. So we'll come back to you. Thank you. Great to be joined by Michelle Durant today from Chelmsford Community Radio, a fellow Essex person. Tell us about your fundraising and what you do there.
So we've been running for about 10 years now. So we're hot on the heels of Gateway, who are leaders, I think, in the fundraising sector. I think it's worth following them. So we've started off, we've done some lottery funding. We've successfully achieved a couple of lottery grants. One was to help with a cafe that we had running for a bit. It helped us move the cafe from one part of our building to another to increase the engagement with building users, local people. The cafe was trying to fundraise to be a sustainable income for our radio station, and it was going all well until the pandemic came along, and because we share the building with other people, we had to close the cafe down, and then the people, some of them decided working at home was cheaper than renting an office, and therefore they didn't come in, they didn't use the cafe, and we had to close the cafe in the end. So we're looking at other ways of being sustainable, and we were very lucky, forever in the debt to the Community Radio Fund. the wonderful team over there. So I was funded for 14 months to be a community outreach and fundraising support officer. And one of the things about a community radio station is we've got a lot of presenters coming in, and they come in and they do their show, and that's the last you see of them all week. In the meantime, who's going to bring in the money? Who's going to do all the community engagement? And you need someone there to help troubleshoot, help support the volunteers that are coming in, the ones that need a little bit of extra help, because people of all ages and abilities are coming in to do radio, and some of them will need extra like buddies and things people to be organised. So it's like a lot of the networking within the community, signposting guests to presenters, going out into the schools. One of the things I was able to do was set up a radio club in a local primary school with some year fives, and they did a whole range of activities over the course of the year, including interviewing some of the counsellors about environmental issues. They made a radio advert for their quiz night. They were raising money for the school, and they actually made a radio drama as part of their sessions that they were doing. I was also able to run a radio drama festival, which is more engagement. We had the City of Chelmsford MenCap. They took part in a radio drama workshop, and I worked with the Columbus School, which is a local special needs school. I worked with more primary age kids. So we managed to, over my time that I was funded by the Community Radio Fund, I brought into the station over £30,000. A lot of it got eaten by our costs, but it proved that it could be done. And I was very, very sad when the funding ended, but we are applying for more. We're actually going to the lottery now for more funding so I can carry on, because it lifted the station up to new heights, being able to do that, to support our volunteers that are coming in to do shows. You need someone there to bring the money in and to do the community engagement. Thank you, Michelle, it's great. And what you've just explained is what I was saying earlier about wrapping the funding idea around your project to deliver something. I'm doing something starting next month. I've never thought about doing it before. You know, the colder months are coming. Got some funding to provide a winter warmth bag to vulnerable people. Some funding has come in for that. And we use the station as a marketing tool to be able to advertise that with a local organisation. So I think, you know, we are really lucky to be able to run radio stations where we can think, what do we do to generate money? It might not be the conventional way of raising money, but what can we do to provide a service locally and use the radio as I always say it's a project inside a project. You know, what can we do to get that money to draw down? So Michelle's given a good example of surviving, basically. Also joined by Richard Hilton, CMA member, but for many years was on the Community Radio Fund panel, and does a great way of if you do apply to that fund, he's a great critical friend.
Thank you. Is this on? Yeah, good. Yes, as Danny was saying, I was on the Community Radio Fund panel for many years, and then came off it, and so basically turned poacher rather than gamekeeper. I think that's the right way around. Bit of background about the Community Radio Fund for those who don't know. It was interesting, it was announced as the Ofcom Community Radio Fund. It isn't, that's a misnomer. Ofcom administer it, the meetings are held at Ofcom, but it is just the Community Radio Fund. It's funded by DCMS, and they basically put in £400,000 a year, which is just for community radio stations. And by community radio stations, they mean community radio stations licensed by Ofcom. So that's the analogue stations, the 317 that are currently on air, and all these new, I'll get it right, CDSP license holders. And they're going to be I think there are about 99 of them at the moment. So there's about 425, and increasing numbers of stations that can apply for it. They are the only people that can apply to this fund. That is really good news, and it's really bad news. The good news is that it's ring-fenced for community radio stations. The bad news is it's ring-fenced for community radio stations, because speaking as somebody who's on the panel, what it means is if you're applying for some of these other funders, you're going up against Donkey Sanctuary, Women's Refuge, Play Centre, etc., etc. So you have a chance of standing out when you're applying for funding, because they go, oh, radio station, that sounds exciting. But with the Community Radio Fund, you are up against other community radio stations. And if you think about the 3 members of the panel, they are reading something like 50 applications from radio station after radio station after radio station. And for me personally, when I was doing it, and I've talked to other members of the panel, after about reading 10 applications, you're going, I can't even remember what the third one was doing or the second one was doing, and what were they asking for money for? It's very repetitive. So it's absolutely critical to stand out when you apply for the fund. Now, there are a number of ways of doing that, and as Danny said, one of the things I do is to try and help people stand out from everybody else, because it is absolutely cutthroat. Danny mentioned it being a lottery. Something like 25% of the stations that applied in the last round got funded, and I think they only gave 24, maybe 30% of the money that was asked for. So it is absolutely cutthroat. So you have really got to put in a good application. So what do they fund? Well, there are a number of things they don't fund, and they clearly state in the guidance notes what they don't fund. And what they don't fund, well, the list is there. And do people every time apply for the things they won't fund? Of course they do. And the panel members just read the application and go, and throw it away, and they just don't get funded. But, that's the way, So please understand what you can apply for. And I'll quickly read out what they say you should apply for, because I think this makes a lot of sense. Well, I'll try and make it make sense. The panel considered that grants should, as far as possible, support the financial stability and long-term sustainability of stations. So we're likely to favour applications which prioritise those areas and/or offered prospects of becoming self-sustaining beyond the term of their grant. What does that mean in English? It means what we have here. Fund her for 1 year, and hopefully she'll keep going for the second year. And in the second year, she'll raise her own salary and the salary for an outreach worker, a part-time engineer, part of a station manager. If you apply for an outreach worker, an engineer, or something like a non-financial role to the fund, they're going to say, okay, it's really exciting, but if I fund it after a year, you're going to have to sack them. You're going to have to let them go, and nothing is sustained. So that's why they want to go for what is really quite dull things, is financial stability.
Okay, sorry, Richard, yeah. I'm getting the wind up here, so right, okay. I need to...
So, very quickly, I'm around all day. I will sell you mugs. I will also sell you... Please come and buy some mugs. I will also talk to you about the Community Radio Fund Assistance Scheme, which I essentially coordinate, run, where I will be a critical friend to you, and I will help you get through. Well, I'll try and make your application stand out, because you have 3 minutes at the panel where they will talk about your fund, your application. It will either be yes, no, maybe. If you're no, they won't go back to it at the end. If it's maybe, they might come back and look at you again if they've got money left over. But okay. You have 3 minutes in front of the panel talking about your application. It is that brutal.
Just a shame the Community Radio Fund is not, rather than it be a year for stability, it should be at least 2 or 3 years to, for you to be able to, hit the targets, and in that time, it's tough going. Okay, and the reason why I wound you up is because we've just got a few minutes where we can, if anyone's got any questions, we can ask a panel. So has anyone got any questions? We've got a few minutes left.
Same question has been asking for the last 19 years.
Same question has been asking for the last 20 years.
When is the fund going to go up? When are the DCMS going to put the fund up? I mean, Richard's just mentioned there again that there are another 90 stations joining the fund. Yeah. And do your maths. I mean, I think that works out now. If you were to split it up, less than £1,000 per station per annum. I mean, it's not fit for purpose, is it?
What I say, and don't want to predict things. I think there's going to be a general election next year, and my betting is we might have a change in government. Just a kind of thought we might. Whether you want it or not, I just think we might have a change in government. So I think there will be opportunities for the CMA to influence the new government and maybe try and get some more money into this sector.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you, Nick, on this. I've been saying this for a long time. They knew this when SSDAB was going to come along. They knew that there'd be same amount of money, but more people applying for it. I mean, it's Dom.
Thank you, great panel. A question for Dimple, if it's okay. And I've applied as a charity to children in need on a number. Actually, firstly as a radio station and then a charity to children in need, and actually flagged some really healthy safeguarding shortfalls. Nothing, catastrophic, but it was a really good quality test. So, that in itself made it worthwhile, and we were able to go to the children's supporting charity NSPCC to get some advice around that. So that was all done. So that was the first turn down, and then kind of by degrees we had some unfortunate turn downs inspired to the fact that they liked what we were doing, COVID and so forth. At what point I actually decided not to apply because I felt we weren't then be spamming. I suspect children in need have got a slightly different perspective, a little landscape now reflecting the current world. Is it time for us to remount the charger? Because I know that you're going to fund us at some point, so it's a question of how we build that relationship.
I think with us, it's another case of we're such an oversubscribed fund. To be honest, our success rate is probably about 18%, which sounds extremely low, but that's just a reflection of how many applications we get and what our budget actually is. So I would say if you put in an application, read all of the guidance. If you meet the criteria and if what you're doing is within the parameters of what we fund, then apply. We've tried to make it so that it's not such an arduous task to apply. And if you do get declined, then please ask for feedback. We don't, generally offer that, but if you come to us for feedback, we will definitely give you feedback. And safeguarding is a really big area. So NSPCC online, please go to that if you're working with vulnerable children and have a look at that, because that's a big area where you fall down. I'd say just keep applying if you have the time to be able to do it and get the feedback.
And just remember though, Dom, when you apply, if you do get through, you'll get a phone call, and you have to have like a phone assessment as well, which I don't know if they still do that, don't they?
Yeah.
And that's great. And they pick out part of your application that might be safeguarding, or something like that. But okay, we've got time just for one more quick one. There you go. Yep. Sorry.
You've gone the other way.
Sorry, you said make your application stand out. Just a question to Richard there.
Yeah.
As a panel reader, what makes an application stand out?
Okay, one of the things they ask about is, tell us a little bit about your station, the philosophy. Station I was working with, I didn't really understand the name of the station. And so I kind of mentioned it to them, and they mentioned why. It was a geographical part of the town. And I said, the panel members are northeast, southwest, London-based. They may not have got geography O levels. They may not understand that. Don't you think we could mention that? So it's little things like that about bringing in the panel members. I always say that when you do, you should assume they don't know where you are. So you start with your county. We're a radio station in this county, and the biggest town is this one, but the second biggest is this one, and we're in this town, and we're in the southwest, in a really deprived area, and we broadcast to this number of people, and you bring them in and you make them feel and stand out like that. So often stations just assume, they know where you are broadcasting from. So there's little tricks like that. And you don't say that your program is eclectic unless it really is, and you don't make statements that can't be substantiated by going on the internet. So there's little things like that that make you stand out. So there's little tricks like that, which is the same with all grant applications, I suspect.
Cool. Well, I'd like to thank my panel. So if you give a round of applause, we've got Dimple, Michelle and Richard. Thank you very much.